started by drawing it out. And the way that I drew this, I took my initial drawing and used a projector to project it onto this paper, and I used my colored pencil. That way I don't have any eraser marks. Everything's nice and clean. You can also use tracing and transfer paper. So that is what's going on here, how you can get your image onto that. I have it taped down with an acid-free, pH-neutral tape. You don't want to leave your artwork taped to your board any longer than possible. If you leave this taped on there for months, it's going to be a little bit harder to remove. If it is hard to get the tape off, what you can do is take your hairdryer and just lightly heat the tape where you're going to be removing it, and that'll loosen up the adhesive and you can pull it off that way. Do it slow, and whenever you do pull the tape off, pull it away from the artwork. Don't pull into the artwork. You'll rip the paper. Pull away so you're less likely to have that happen. So a couple tips there. And you can get this reference photo over at my website. I'm going to tape that so that I can rest my hand right on the paper there. Okay. And that is not the pencil I want. So most of what I'm going to be using tonight are my Derwent Lightfast and the Polychromos. And what I'm going to do is just do a few pencil strokes, see if that looks right. Yeah, that color looks good. And this color I'm using here is wheat. I'm going to use some blue. I'm using turquoise blue by the Caran d'Ache Luminance. Let's get some of the highlights that go right around his eye in here. So the black I'm going to put just to make sure that stays nice and dark right around the eye there. And that is very similar to the paper. Get some highlights around the eye. Okay, and then back to the wheat pencil. Let's get in where these lighter areas are going to go. Now, if I go too light, it's no big deal. I can come back through with browns or darker colors and fill that in. Just going to map out about where everything goes on his face. Now, I don't want to jump around too much. If I'm working here and then I'm down on his feet, like one of the things that a lot of people when they're newer, myself included, when I first started painting and drawing, if I had a certain color out, my mind said, put that color, like if I'm using blue, where else does that blue go? Let's just put blue everywhere right now. Don't do that. Break it down into a smaller chunk, a smaller section. That's going to make it much easier to tackle and really pay attention to what you're doing. When you're just going, okay, blue, where all does blue go? Your work is not going to look very good. So this is not a paint by number situation. We're doing a lot of layering and a lot of little detail. So you want to really just break it down into smaller little bite-sized chunks that you're focused on before you move on. And you don't have to use the same colors that I'm using. Close is close enough. It's mostly tans. The thing that you want to avoid, and especially in this case, no yellows. Put all your yellow pencils away. You do not need them. That will give you a very unnatural rainbowy look. Usually when you're drawing fur, there will be very, very, very rare times where yellow is a color that you want to use. And I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm drawing a golden retriever or a yellow lab. Yellow's in the name. Let's use yellow. No, that is not going to look good. Same thing if you're doing a portrait and the person has blonde hair. Yellow is not really a color you're going to use. This color here, wheat, is great. You'll use purple for shadows. You can sometimes use orange tones, but mostly it's the brownish tones and grays. And I'm not going to go too far down on the neck right now. I just want to fill in about where those highlights are going to go. And I want to pay attention to which direction the fur is moving in. Now this is small enough. I don't need to do a ton of blending with OMS. Not even sure I'll use that tonight. We'll see. But so because of that, I can start just burnishing and pushing a little bit harder because I don't need a ton of layers to get the look that I'm going for. I'm letting a lot of that background paper show through to create the look of fur. Okay. And also, side note, super excited. Just want to let those of you who are patrons know, I went to the zoo yesterday. I finally got new photos. I've got hummingbirds. I got the most gorgeous photo of a coyote. I'm trying to think, what else do I have for you guys? I'll be editing them and uploading them in the next week or so. What else did I get? A bald eagle. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I haven't loaded the SD card to see what they came out. I think looking at the camera, they look like they came out good. This bald eagle was just the photos on the camera anyway. I'm excited. There were some really good shots. I don't know how the hummingbirds, I've never photographed hummingbirds before, so we'll see how those came out, but I'm pretty excited about these photos. So those will be soon. And meerkats, that's what made me think of it. The meerkats were one of them. So those you guys will have soon. Okay, back to work. So I'm kind of hitting a lot of these. Where are the light areas? Let's see, really light there. Now notice in here, it's more solid, but look at how in the background, I want that background black showing through so he looks fluffy. Few little hairs over his ear. I don't even need to fill in black over the ear, just leave it as it is. Like that's let the paper work for you. If you're using a colored paper, let it make things easier for you. And it's funny because the polychromos are fairly translucent, being more the higher oil content than your other pencils. They're going to be more translucent. But man, do they show up good on black paper. You wouldn't think they would, but they're really good. But because they sharpen to a finer point, that's why I'm choosing this one right now. It makes it easier for some of the hair. So that's actually a good thing to talk about really quick. Why I choose, let's say, polychromos versus, why do I said that earlier today too, Prismacolor. I don't ever choose Prismacolor. That was never a choice for me. Why I might choose polychromos versus luminance versus Derwent Lightfast. So what determines which color I'm choosing? All of the colors are, or all of these brands are a combination of wax and oil. When we, as artists, talk about something being oil based, what we mean is it has a higher or oil content, so it behaves somewhat differently. What a higher oil based content means, which is going to be your polychromos, is going to be the oiliest, I guess. It's a harder lead, typically going to be more translucent, and because it is a harder lead, I can sharpen that. Let's see if you can see. Like that's a pretty fine point. That's also not in focus at all, but it's a really fine point. Because of that, that's going to be great for my tiny, tiny details. If I want to get something that's blended more smoothly, I want something with a higher wax content. Now, Derwent Lightfast does list theirs as an oil-based pencil. To me, in practice, it feels somewhere, it's like a really good balance between oil and wax. But that means it's also going to blend better. It's not going to get as fine of a point as the polychromos, but it's going to blend smoother. It's going to be easier to get that smooth blending. The Caran d'Ache Luminance is going to be the same thing. They're going to blend a lot more, a lot easier to get that smooth blending than with the polychromos. Now, it doesn't mean you can't get fine detail with luminance or smooth blending with polychromos. You can. You just adjust your techniques a bit. And so I choose them based on which is going to go faster, which is easier. So fine details, polychromos is my first choice. When I want smooth blending, my Caran d'Ache Luminance or my Derwent Lightfast are my first choice. Now, sometimes it's simply based on color. One of these brands may have a color the others don't have, and then in that case, that's why I choose it, not because it's a harder, pointier lead or anything like that. So just a few reasons why I might choose a harder lead or one brand over another. So this color, this nougat color, will work really well for some of the shadow under his chin. I'll still have to come back through with some highlights, but that's going to be good. Jason asked, if yellow isn't being used, what will be what will be the buildup under the drawing? Never yellow. Yellow's more going to be for birds and such, birds, fish, flowers. But when it comes to, or plants, when it comes to animals, very rarely, like animals with fur, it is fairly uncommon to have an animal. This is Heather. It's fairly uncommon to have an animal where you're going to be using yellow. Yellow, it's just, unless you've got a yellow light, a yellow warm glow bouncing off the animal, the fur itself, the hair itself is almost never yellow. So in this case with him, sandstone would work, like an orangey red color or reddish orange, like a brown orange. Those are the colors that you want to go with, not yellow. Yellow's going to look weird, and especially up against the black paper. So here, this color is my burnt ochre. That's going to be really good as I get into this reddish orange color. Or burnt ochre, as it turns out. I'm not worried too much about my values right now, or even the smaller details. I'm just mapping out what goes where. Now, there are rare exceptions when yellow will work in something like that on fur, but it is rare. So if you're not sure, just don't even pull your yellow pencils out. See if I can map out. Actually, let's see how well my nightshade shows up on this paper. Not well. That's actually just going to work good for making my darks really dark. Okay, so I need to go back to the nougat. Now, if you struggle with deciding what colors to use, huge tip, use less colors. Most of these sets come in a set of 120, some of them right around there. You've got a lot of colors to choose from, and that can be very, very overwhelming, especially when you're new. If that is something that's kind of hanging you up and you're not sure what to choose, use less. Pick one orange. You don't need like 3 or 4 oranges. Pick one green, pick one blue, and figure out how to blend all of your colors to get the results you want. More colors definitely complicates things. It's much easier to make something look good with fewer colors and just blending. You're sure that those colors are going to work together too, because you didn't use very many and most of the colors you're blending came from the same small set. Most of my time will be spent around the face. Once we move into the body, that will go a lot faster. And even as I go in here, it's not that it's a ton of tiny detail, but I still want to make sure that fur is moving in the right direction. Don't just make a couple of pencil strokes, realize it looks good, and then think, oh, I'll just do more of that one. Yeah, that's probably not going to give you the results you're looking for. Now, as I get in here, I've filled in a bit too solid. No problem. I'm going to come back through with either nightshade or black and see which one looks better. Nightshade is working, and pull in some of those dark hairs again. I'm going to let this nightshade fade up into that cream color or wheat that we used earlier. I'll use a bit of white on some of this. Sharpening my pencils really quick. And the sharpener that I'm using, let me show you that. These are just these smaller Coom handheld sharpeners. These are definitely my go-to sharpener with colored pencil. I'm just gonna twist that in there. And I keep a mason jar with my shavings just right under my easel, so it makes it really easy for me to sharpen quickly. I used to use mechanical sharpeners, but I started having issues with them just burning through pencils too fast. And I've bought a few that were defective, the sharpener, not the pencil, when they needed to be replaced. And I just went back to these, and I was really surprised how much I'm able to save in my pencils. Like, I don't burn through them nearly as fast when I just use these little handheld cheapy guys. Oops, pushed a little too hard. See, that would not, pushing that much pressure with the polychromos would not have broken. But because this is a softer lead, being the Derwent Lightfast, that's why that is going to snap. And it's just the nature of how hard or how soft the lead is. If you're using a really soft lead like Prismacolor, that's going to, well, it's going to break because it hates you, but it's just going to do that. And like they just break constantly, no matter what you do. So have fun with those. But with these, if you sharpen to too fine of a point, they are going to snap the softer the lead gets. And a lot of what I'm going to do in here are just little dots. Oops. Let's get that lighter color. So this one is ivory. That's my polychromos. Whoops. Even that one was sharpened too much. Tip broke there. Pull just a little bit of highlighting in here. Get the shine on the eye. I don't think this brown will show up. Nope. That can get put to the side. Don't need him. And then we move way off, back down into that more golden tone, so the burnt ochre. But on this piece, as much as possible, I want to use my polychromos because I don't want them to blend too. Like, I'm not trying to get super soft blending. I would rather have fine detail. Just because this is kind of small for the amount of detail I'm trying to fit into it. Watch how that fur switches. This gets a little confusing in here. We've got the fur moving in a lot of different directions. Tiny little detail, so I'm going to use my polychromos there. Oh, I already like his cute little eye. Tiny hair, so again with the polychromos. They go in some different directions. So notice that I did this in a couple of layers. I had that nougat, so that brownish tone first, and now I'm coming through with tiny little fur marks on top of that. Okay, so that's mostly mapped out at that point. Now I'm just going to focus a little bit more on details and values. I pretty much can see where things go at this point. Oop, no, not white. That'd be too bright. Wrong choice. So I'm just going to let that lay into the black a bit. Break up some of these black lines, but I'm going to come back through with both the black, or either black, doesn't really have to be both. The black and here is the nightshade to get those darker areas in. I just use a real light hand to barely lighten that. I go back in and pull that back over the nightshade as well. Let those two mix together. I'm not pushing hard to get that transition. So I get that really pretty purple in there when I lighten it with the ivory. Nightshade's this really deep dark purple. That is a pencil. If you don't get any other Derwent Lightfast colors, get Nightshade. Get at least that pencil. That's one of mine that I just cannot do without. So right now this blue's really light. I will tone that down a little bit with Nightshade once I get it mapped out a bit better. Now I'll always spend just a bit of extra time around the eye, around the face. You can see how the fur starts switching directions again here. If you struggle with fur, this project is great for practicing that. Just getting in the hang of watching the direction that it goes in. And I am pushing a lot harder for these last layers because I don't need to do a ton of blending on top of them at that point. Little dots. Looks my glass scene sliding down there. I would like to get a little bit more of a golden orange color in some of these. So let me try a few pencils and see what stands out more. Yeah, that one's kinda. What was that one? Was Indian red. We've got sanguine. Let's see how that looks after I sharpen it. I think I like that better. Yeah, that one works. I'm going to lightly go over a bunch of this here. And then I'll soften it up with the ivory right on top. I'm going to push a bit harder over here where I really want that ivory to stand out. I'm super excited to get moving on to the body. I think that's going to be the funnest part for me. This part I actually have to pay a bit more attention to. When you get into the body, it's not as big of a deal. You can certainly start being a little bit more loose as you move around with the colors and the shapes. And if the hair is going in the wrong direction, it's not as big of a deal as it is here where we're working on the face. The face definitely matters more. So I'm really liking how this color looks. This one, still the burnt ochre. So that combined with the sanguine, I think is a good combination. And then we've got that darker color. What do I want for the dark? Let's see. Decisions. Actually, I might use the brown overlaying that. Yeah, that'll work. That brown that I put away earlier, the burnt umber, will work well for some of these shadowed areas in the neck. I may come back up, and I'm sure I'm going to do a little bit more work around the face once we move. I get a little bit more done here. So as we get into here, close is close enough. It does not need to be absolutely exact. Just don't make things too uniform. You don't want to have where everything's exact, like every brush stroke is or pencil stroke is going the same direction. If you do, it is not going to look very natural. Jason said, if you use another background for the colored for the paper, can you get the same result for the end result? So the difference, if you use, let's say I used a blue paper, then I'm going to have to put in more black, but other than that, the pencils are going to work pretty much the same. You're just going to use your black pencil more or the nightshade to darken a lot of where I'm just leaving the black paper showing through. But if I used a blue paper, I would intentionally leave a lot of the blues showing through so that it felt a part of that color, like if that makes sense. It makes everything work together better. Okay, I'm going to use some with the white where I want it to be a lot brighter, and then I'll switch back to the ivory. So I'm often asked if you can do a lot of what I do without using odorless mineral spirits. This is a good way to do it. This, with that fluffy fur, I don't need to do a bunch of blending. I don't even think I'm going to need any blending with OMS tonight, which makes things easier because then we don't have to worry about the dry time. Now because he's against that black background, I'm going to leave a little bit more black showing through too than what the reference photo has. And see, now I can start loosening up my pencil stroke a lot as I move down. Now watch in this whole area, a lot of this fur is aimed at the viewer. So a lot of this is just going to be little dots, little teeny or pencil strokes, not the huge strokes. That'll help give him more dimension, look a lot more realistic. So I'll lighten a little bit with the ivory, but not too much. That's going to be pretty dark in there. Yeah, that brown works really well for these darker areas. It gives a nice transition between the blacks and the golden tones. Oh, I like this guy already. I'm excited. I was a little bit nervous if I was going to be able to move through a colored pencil piece fast enough to finish the whole thing during the stream, but I think we'll be okay. I mean, a longer part of the stream will be the artwork, but I think we'll be okay. See, now that nightshade into those deepest shadows. But I'm not covering all of the brown. I want to leave some of that showing through. I want to get those deeper areas to make that look darker, like it's further in shadow. It makes everything look much more three-dimensional. And I'm pushing pretty hard right now with that nightshade. I am really getting that in there. Now this whole area needs to be lightened up, but I need more of this reddish gold tone. Pull that in. I'm going to come in through this with the ivory and let that lay into the color. Let them overlap each other. Now these lines, it is really important. They are not perfectly straight. They are all very slightly curved, and this is going to give you a more natural look. If you do a bunch of straight lines, it looks a bit too confetti-like. And they all overlap too. So I'm not just going line here, line, you know, just random lines all over. See how they group and cluster and overlap. Clumps and clusters are a really big deal when you're making something look like real fur. Or the same thing, even grass, feathers, anything like that. And because I have that nightshade, as that ivory mixes in, I'm going to get this really pretty purple tone pulling out. Now I'm pulling the fur this direction too much. I don't like it. What I'm going to do is take my perfection eraser, pull some of that up so I can correct the direction of my fur. I'm getting, just because, I think it's because of how I'm sitting and reaching around the camera, my hand is just going a certain direction. So I'm going to pull it out this way more. Much better. Okay, let's move this over, actually. But while I reposition the glassine, you can watch a message from the boys. Without treats, these puppies are so sad. Your Patreon pledge of only $4 or more gives them cookies of happiness. Act now, and the bad cow gets a treat too. Oh, and you also get over 300 art lessons and a new one every single week, plus other rewards. Sign up at patreon.com/Lachri. And now we're going to start working on the body. And this is, we really need to watch the direction of the hair. Pay attention to our values. Do not cover all of your darks. We really want a lot of the darks on this to show through, a lot of the dark paper. Okay. Some long little wispy furs. I need to sharpen that pencil. Few little guys sticking out there. Don't go too crazy with these longer ones. Go. Then I'll fill it a bit more solid here. Right along the little hand. And across the top of his foot. Now I'm going to leave the rock really sketchy. We're just going to fade out into what's very obviously like colored pencil sketch. It's not going to look realistic on the rock. So we'll get less and less detail as I move down. I just want to block in so I don't fill in where I don't want to with the really light colors. A few little patches of the lighter area. And don't worry too much about messing things up. As you saw earlier, I was able to just erase and rework an area where I got a little bit, wasn't paying attention, and the fur started going the wrong direction. So we've got that sticking up here a lot. And I'm not going crazy with any of the details, just want to make sure I know what goes where. Okay, I think that gives us a lot of the really bright areas in addition to here. Actually, I'm not even going to worry about the back right now. I'm going to worry about this zone in here. Otherwise, I need to take my own advice on work on a small section and focus on just that so it doesn't get too overwhelming and you lose your place. Now, right now, see how these are really, really light? It's no big deal because now when I go over them, it's going to make my burnt ochre a lighter version of that burnt ochre than it would have been over the black paper. So we've got that nougat color for these darker areas. See how this turns that way. We've got some smaller dots. I'll get highlights in there too. Let me come back through with some nightshade and break that up. I'm pushing a little bit harder so that gives me that smoother look. Then those dots. Now this method, because I am pushing harder, this does start to tire out my hand. You may need to take a break if you're pushing really hard like I am. I know because I have arthritis in that hand. It doesn't like when I give that much, add that much pressure for any real length of time. I mean, it'll be fine for this live stream, but I wouldn't be able to sit here and work for hours on end like I might normally. I'm going to layer now that golden color right over it. Same thing over here. It's a little bit more solid, not quite as stringy with the fur. And then where did my nightshade go? Again, with the way too many pencils in my hand, losing track. Now lightly blend out the black into the nightshade so I get a better transition into the golden color. I can take a few dark details in there. Make sure you're spending more time looking at your reference photo than you are your actual artwork. Keeping these really sharp. It starts to switch direction downwards. Up here, it's flipping back up. He has one mess of a bed head. Bed body? Bed, that doesn't sound right, does it? And it flips back up this direction. Like, seriously, it is going and then back down the other direction. It is all over the place. Really look at that photo. It doesn't have to be exact, but you do want it close. Switching over to ivory for some highlights in here. This is really fun. Just don't rush it. It definitely will feel overwhelming if you're trying to get it done too quickly. So I have this little sand tool. You guys see these a lot. They come in drawing kits. A lot of people think these are for sharpening your shading tools. They're not. They're for sharpening your pencils. Don't sharpen a shading tool. It doesn't need to be sharpened. You ruin it. But what I can do, this pencil is pretty sharp already. There's not, I mean, it looks sharp, but it's not quite as sharp as what I want. So all I'm going to do is just twist that. And I can get this nice, really fine point. My pencils are going to last so much longer if I do that instead of just sharpening every time I want it a bit pointier. So now I've got that nice pointy bit, and my pencil's going to last longer. But that is what those are for. It is not for sharpening. Oh, that's wonderful. It is not for sharpening those shading tools. You will ruin your shading tools with that. And I know there are videos telling you that's what they're for. That's because too many people don't know what they're actually for. Okay. And a lot as we move down here will be ivory and white. So here we've got more of the golden tones. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sharpen that right along here. Just twist it and pull it back and forth. Nice and pointy. And that's going to get you sharper than a sharpener would get anyway. Perfect. Get some highlights right in here. Pull that up a bit further, and then I'll layer some of the other tones into it. Right on top. Then I'm going to come back through with purple, or not purple, the nightshade. If you have not already, please subscribe. Please hit the like button to let YouTube know that you like the video and you want other people to see it too. It helps. Share the video. That really will help a lot because YouTube doesn't like to notify people anymore when content goes live. So that will really help too. Oh, he's already looking so fluffy. These are those little teeny guys, kind of going in all different directions here. But they're not just scribble directions. They're not just all, like when I say all directions, I don't literally mean like, don't go crazy. They group, they move in almost rows. So really look at that on your reference photo. So we've got this shadowed area here. I'll use that nougat again. And that fur is much softer in there, so we'll let it just be a bit more solid. I'm liking him more than I expected. I love when that happens. Let's get some highlights in there, and I'm going to overlap that right over that golden tone. And I want that to fade into that shadow. So what I'll do is come back through in here now with that nightshade and pull the nightshade over everything that's around it. Just watch the direction of that fur. Flips back up this direction. A few little dark bits in here. I'm curious, for those of you who are artists watching, are your own walls covered with your artwork? Let me know why they are or aren't. I'm really curious. I'm surprised sometimes when I go into these just fabulous artists' homes and all their art is stored away and nothing, their walls are just blank, nothing on their walls. It always surprises me. I got into painting and drawing because I wanted stuff to, when I was a teenager or preteen, I wanted stuff on my walls. I didn't have posters and such like my friends did. So I started drawing stuff on the back of paper bags, like grocery store paper bags, or just cheap art paper, white art paper, and taping those all over my walls. So it's always interesting to me when an artist has a lot of artwork completed, but they're not hanging them. Now, right now, this is very flat because I don't really have the shadows and such built in. We'll come back through and fix that up. Actually, let's do that now. I'm going to take a little bit. This one is my Caput Mortem. I'm going to lightly go over and just tint some of these. Okay, let's start working on this area. So this really starts moving in rows. Watch that. Don't worry too much. It doesn't need to be perfect. I know I've said that a million times, but it really doesn't. You just, close is good enough, but do make it at least close. No one's going to notice if you have an extra stripe or two or not enough. My problem is I ran out of wall space for all of my own artwork. So that's why I have a lot of stuff stored. And I normally hoard it all, but lately I've been trying to actually make an effort to sell it so some of you guys can enjoy it, because otherwise they're just sitting stored because I'm a hoarder and I don't want to give them up because I'm all attached to them. Time to let some of them go. I actually need to update what I have available on my website soon. See what I mean? The body, everything goes much faster. That face is what takes the longest. curving around in here. Go back to that cream color, flip a few of those out. And if you're working, let's say, on a blue paper, you'll definitely spend some more time getting the black areas, the darks in. But in that case, let some of the blue show through and be an added highlight. You've got those little dots where the fur is aiming a little bit more at the viewer. Okay, I need to get some gray tones in there. Let's see how Mars Violet works. That one is luminance, so it's not going to keep as fine of a point. It's a much softer lead. Oh, but that is a good color. We'll do a little bit with this one. That also means if I introduce a new color, I need to put it in a few other places so it doesn't feel like, wow, that was nowhere else in the piece. So you can see I'll pull it up into the face a little bit. That brings everything together better. And of course, we've got to darken some of our darks up. There we go. Let's see how this one, it may be too light still. Nope, that's actually perfect. So this one is cold gray. Warm gray probably would be better, but whatever, this works. Actually, I don't even think you'd notice a difference because of the way that I'm mixing these. But that gives me a bit of a variation, so it's not just straight white where it's flat. This starts pulling in some other colors. Okay, let's go back over to our nightshade. I'm going to sharpen that on my little sanding block here. I'm pushing it, I'm giving it a decent amount of pressure here. I want this to be pretty dark. Sharpen that pencil. Still adding a good amount of pressure there. This whole area is really flat. I've got to pull some highlights in here too. This, see how it's all one solid color? That's not going to work. Let's get some highlights on the tips of these. There we go. Much better. I can also use that gray from earlier. See, he's got the hint of his nails. Most of this is in shadow, but we've got some little detail in there. So some of these, notice it's kind of a dot, like a chunk, and then it fans out into the row. But you've got these thicker spots in that within that row. So don't just make stripes going all the way across. Break those up. Same thing in here. I need to come into this arm, get some of these darks in. And the nice thing with using nightshade instead of using black, when it gets into some of these orangey tones, you get this weird, ugly, muddy color. But with nightshade, that really doesn't happen. Let me know, do any of you have a certain color and colored pencil? What color and what brand can you just not live without? Nightshade is mine. Now I'm going to start pulling some blues in parts of this. So I'm not going to go too crazy with that shadow here yet. Get a little bit on his foot here. Just a hint of his nail. And I'm going to move this over so I can get his tail. And that will be really loose. And then we'll do a little bit of color correcting. So I'm going to keep this pretty soft. As we move down into that rock, we're going to get a lot looser anyway. A few little hints of fur. Need to sharpen that pencil though. Now, I will often avoid that grainy, gritty look that you get with colored pencil on paper. This one, I mean, I've got it in a lot of the areas here, just the nature of the style I'm going with, but this is going to be one of the examples. This is an interesting thing. If you've got that reference photo, look at the tail. Using, no matter what paper you're using, working on it. Let's say I was doing something where I'm going super detailed, super blending everything, looks like a photo. I would take advantage of getting a grainy, gritty look in that case, because that's what the photo, I mean, that's what the fur at the tip there looks like. It looks like he's got mud and sand all over it. So you don't need to overblend that. So, and that's one of the things that I'm taking advantage of here. The colored pencil naturally kind of wants to get that look. Let it. There are cases where that is going to make your life easier. Don't feel like you have to blend everything. Few highlights, but most of this is going to be in the darker colors. And I just kind of want to let that blend out anyway. I'm not going to put any more detail down there. Where did my my nightshade is in my hand. There we go. That's really all I want to do, minus where I come through with the blues. Okay, let's get the hint of the rock. I'm going to use that nugget. I'm going to keep this just sketchy, just that hint, so it's really artsy looking. Holding that pencil to the side, very rough. I'm going to tone part of this down where I want it more in shadow. Even though I'm not going crazy with the detail, I will come through with a nightshade and darken some of that up. So even though I want it to be loose, I don't want it to be flat. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with my nightshade. I'm going to hold it to the side. I'm not trying to completely cover the nugget. I just want it in shadow. And I'm going to pull out highlights too over the other parts. Let's see how you can see it, but it's pushed way back. So here, I just want that hint, toning that down. I'll use the ivory. Don't go crazy with the ivory. I just want a little bit of detailing in here. Or not detailing. That is the wrong word. I want a little bit of highlights. Some of this is off camera. I know. It's the same thing. It's just fading out. There we go. Okay, now we're just going to work on a few details, and I want to start getting some of these blues in there. So you know me, I love outlining or getting that blue reflection hitting one side. We're going to be doing that, and I'm going to be doing that with two colors. The Caran d'Ache turquoise blue and the Helio blue reddish from Faber-Castell, or Polychromos. Yeah, Faber-Castell, that was correct. So let's get some highlights in here. Now, right now, some of these are going to be really bright. I'll be toning that down with the darker blue. So like here, I want that to be a lot darker. Just go right over it. And if I had used this blue, like you can see as I go over the black, you can't see it. It doesn't do anything. I've got to put that lighter blue down first that's more more opaque. And then I can just tint it. It gets this beautiful, beautiful like reflection, whether that's sky or water reflecting on him. It just looks so pretty. Pull that into the fur a bit more. And I'm not going to go super crazy with that. I'm not trying to make a big rainbow color. You know, I'm keeping it pretty simple. A little bit. And that is keeping my hand from smudging anything, but it also keeps any oils from my skin off the hand. Or off the hand. No, it keeps it on the hand. It keeps it off the paper. You want to keep that archival. And people juice, not archival. It's rather gross, actually. I think just adding that bit of blue, and it's more of a stylized thing. There's nothing about it that I'm doing that is correct to the reference photo, but it just looks so nice. I do it on just about everything. A very stylized look. And then anywhere where I want to darken that up a bit, just go back over that with the blue very lightly. Line that ear just a bit with the blue, and then I'm going to come back through with a darker blue. We are almost done with this guy. I'm going to push part of this back in. I'm pulling that blue now along the side here. Are you comfy over there, Wade? What are you doing? I could layer this into the areas too with the blue where the nightshade is, and it's just going to tint it a little bit. Now, I want to see more. I like where the blue is hitting here. I want to see a little bit more of that blue under his chin. So I'm going to do the same thing. Let's pull some of that through with that lighter blue. And then I'll lightly go over that again with the darker blue. Like I said, if I would have just done this with the dark blue, it would not have shown up like this. Correct the shape of his nose. And I may come through tomorrow, I usually do, and make tiny little adjustments. Nothing that you're really going to notice, honestly, but little tiny things when I have fresh eyes, because I've been sitting in front of this now for an hour and a half almost. My eyes are getting blurry. So I may come back and see just something minor, maybe a little hair sticking out here or there. Like it would be very, very minor. He's just about, oh, I'm loving him. I'm so excited about him. He came out so much cuter than I expected. I mean, he's a meerkat, so he's going to be cute, but this is a good one. So I'm going to break this up. This is really solid. I'd like some areas that are a lot brighter. Let's darken some of this. This is the fun part to me. Okay, I don't want that one. I'm actually, that Indian red is just a little too red. Let's go back to Caput Mortem for the darker. Yeah, that's better. So Derwent Lightfast has two colors in here. They've got Arctic and white. They are almost the same. I am telling you, you will not notice the difference. I use them interchangeably. This one's Arctic, and it looks just like white. Both are nice and opaque. I'm going to pull a few of these highlights now to find them a bit more with that white or Arctic. So see, I'm just going through little spots that need to be touched up. I thought I might need the touch-up texture titanium white mixture on this. I really don't. Everything stuck super well. I got all of the details I wanted. So I'm not going to be doing that on this one. I actually like the polychromos better for those little lines. They're a little bit thinner. Just about done here. Blue's a little bit too blue. Let's go over that with Nightshade just to tone that down. Actually, and that won't look as bright. It's over because of the lights being so bright on here. That makes it look a lot brighter too, but I still want to tone that down. A little bit too colorful right there. There we go. Much better. Okay. Now, I have to decide where to sign that. So, what I'm going to do is take my mat and hold it up to about where that would be matted. Whether I mat this for the person or they mat it, I still want to make sure the signature stays within this. So, this is about where that mat would hit. Don't worry, if you're getting a mat, you'll get a clean one. This is the dirty one I keep reusing that, well, it's dirty. Okay, let's take, which pencil do I want to use? I want it to show up, but I don't want it to draw more attention to the signature than the artwork itself. So I'm going to choose a color that I've used throughout this. We'll go with, this is the burnt ochre. I'm going to put the signature right here. So that way, look how far up this is on the paper. This is a 9x12. The paper is 9x12. So if I had signed all the way down at the bottom, that would have gotten covered by the mat because it's intended to be an actual 8x10 finished piece. So that lets me know I'm not chopping that off in my mat. There we go. And that way the signature will show. I could even put a little bit of blue on that. There we go. So that guy is all done. Oh, I'm in love with him. He is so cute. Like I knew he'd be cute. I wasn't sure how cute he'd be after this much work, but there's a couple spots I have a feeling I'm going to come back with fresh eyes and do a few little things, but that's pretty much where he will be. So yeah, that worked out really well. So fluffy.